Hey Denver, Chris Lopez here, and on today's podcast, we are interviewing a house hacker who closed on a house hack, a single-family home house hack in Arvada with a mother-in-law suite. So it's a great story, and it's a great property we'll dive into. So our guest is Erik Mehus. Erik, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, Chris. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on here. I mean, we've known each other for a couple years now. We've talked investing off and on, and getting this house hack, I mean, you got a great deal here. It's a great setup, too, for, while you guys are living there. So it's going to be a great story. So tell us, who are you? Tell us about yourself.
Great question. Well, went to school in Colorado, up in Boulder, been around here since graduated in 11, and really been interested in real estate investing from an early age, something I've seen a lot of family friends be involved with, and something that always was of interest. On the work front, was in the production of ski movies for a long time, recently transitioned to doing fleet leasing, so vehicles for businesses. And along with that was, some opportunity, a little more stability to start working on the real estate portfolio. So closed on a first property in Lakewood in 2017. It's a 2-bed, 1-bath condo, and been wanting to continue growing the portfolio since then.
And so when you bought this condo in Lakewood, you said you bought that 2017?
Yeah, fall of 2017.
Okay. Did you buy it with the intention of house hacking or nomading it, or just buy it because you wanted to buy a place?
So bought it with the intention of it becoming a rental. So bought it with that sort of mindset. And then my fiancée, girlfriend at the time, was living with me, and she was my first tenant. So way for us to get into a place that was our own, buy a property, and also keep our expenses low.
All right. So from there, you bought the first place, what's your goals, what's your plan? Tell people the roadmap for how house hacking is working your real estate investing plan.
So the goal was to basically keep living expenses low while building equity in the property through, principal down payment, some appreciation, making updates to it while you live there. So really the first stepping stone to building up a portfolio that, with the end goal of having that passive income eventually replace the need for salary, which I think is a pretty common theme among a lot of, investors and house hackers especially.
Yep.
Is, do I want to work my day job? Possibly. If you love it, that's awesome. I think it just comes down to having that option of working a day job versus having to work one.
Yep. So let's talk about this property that you got, this house hack in Arvada. Because when did you start the hunt on this property?
So we started looking, my fiance and I started looking for this property sort of early to mid 2020. We'd talked about wanting to get a place that had a yard, that had some more space, and that sort of became a reality with new jobs and roles for both of us. Qualifying for a loan as a previous 1099 contractor was always a challenge, and that's sort of why we've been talking for a couple of years. Is I had a hard time qualifying for a loan previously. So with a W-2 job for both of us, we said, okay, this is a real opportunity that we can start to take advantage of now.
Yeah, lenders like you a lot more when you're W-2.
I know, they really do.
Yes. All right. So, and I know, unfortunately, Preston Newberry could not join the podcast today. He's out showing properties right now. But I'm going to turn to the spreadsheet here. On the right-hand side of the screen, I got the spreadsheet with all your notes in here. Erik, I'm going to populate in here on the left. So I'll talk these numbers through as we go through it. So it's a single-family home, primary residence. And give us the layout of the property and what part of town it's in. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so it is near Arvada West High School. So I think 62nd and Sims is probably the closest major intersection that people would recognize. It's 3 houses down from a great park. So it's a quiet neighborhood, but you've still got good access to 70. I-70 is about 5-7 minute drive. You've got Ralston Creek Trail nearby for walking and biking. So really great location in terms of access, but also in terms of just a place to live. The property setup is it's a 6-bed, 2-bath split level home. So the main front door, there's stairs leading downstairs and there's stairs leading upstairs. So what we really liked about this place is that it was already set up as basically 2 units. There was basically just a door that needed to be put in, and both upstairs and downstairs have their own kitchens, their own washer and dryer hookups, and their own bathrooms. So
that's a great setup.
yeah, so that to us was huge because we didn't have to come in and do a bunch of plumbing work to get a washer and dryer stubbed in or put in a kitchen. And so the way we looked at it is there's a mudroom in the back of the property that also accesses both units, and we decided that was going to make the most sense for the downstairs unit to access through the rear of the property.
All right. So let's talk about the contract on this property. What was the list price for?
List price on this one was $480. So we came in at ask initially. The market, we closed on this in September of 2020. So the market was hot, but not quite as hot as it is right now. So in talking with Preston and our experience with what else was going on in the market, we said, we'll come in at ask, even though there's some stuff that we think needs to get done. We'll figure out what that looks like during due diligence.
Okay. And so was your offer accepted?
Our offer was not officially accepted. We got some feedback that, we needed to come up a little bit on price. The seller was an owner of, I believe it was 50 properties in Denver, in the process of liquidating his portfolio. So he didn't want to deal with any nitpicky items. So we had to, adjust and throw in a clause that we wouldn't go after items under, I believe it was $1,200 or $1,500 on the inspection. And we did need to throw a little bit of a $5,000 appraisal gap in there as well.
Okay. And that got you the deal then?
That's what we thought, right? We were like, okay, cool. We did everything they asked. The Preston had done a deal with this agent, a few months prior. So we said, okay, here it is. Here's the updated contract. We're waiting for it signed, checking with Preston. He's like, they're not getting back to me. Turns out they basically waited through the weekend, even though we had a 24-hour response deadline. They waited through the weekend, and they ended up getting an offer coming in closer to $500,000. So, almost $20,000 or $20,000 over ask, and they said we decided to go with that.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the game. So you put your first offer in, you came back with a counter, you still lost out, but we're still talking about the property. So what happened?
Yeah, so what Preston said is, hey, doesn't hurt to throw in a backup offer. You never know what's going to happen. Could fall out of contract, and then basically we're slotted in to take next place. And that's something that I honestly wasn't very familiar with, but it said, this is the property. This makes a lot of sense, and if we can get this one, that'd be great. So we submitted the backup offer and continued to start look at other properties in the meantime.
And then what, like a week and a half later, you got a phone call back?
Yeah. I think it was Friday afternoon. Preston called and said, hey, got some good news. Fell out of contract, and we've got it. So,
and you were at the price for the 483?
The 483,
the original, yep.
Mm-hmm. And turns out the previous couple that was under contract on the property, they were first-time home buyers, and they got the inspection report, and there were some big-ticket items that we could very obviously see. And I think once they saw the whole laundry list, they got cold
scared
feet.
them.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's very common for first-time home buyers, and it's also, putting in backup offers. Hey, we win deals that way. It's a good way to get deals because things fall out of contract, and if you're there ready to go, hey, that speaks volumes. So you did the inspection on this place, or you got the inspection report from the previous buyer, and then you also had your own inspection. Why did you also do your own inspection?
So the reason we did our own inspection is because we had been under contract on a previous property, and this inspector had been really thorough, straightforward, honest about the condition of that previous property, and basically said, this is going to be way more work than you think it's going to be, and if it were me, I wouldn't move forward with it. And to get that kind of honest, candid feedback was really helpful because we're, rose-eyed glass or rose-tinted glasses. This is going to be great. We'll do all this work ourselves. It'll only take a couple months.
And you're under contract. There's a big emotional thing that a lot of people don't realize about property. Like once you're under contract, especially when you're like first property to, like there's a lot of emotion attached to it, and it becomes harder to walk away from it.
Yeah.
Because you're already committed. You've already dropped off a $5,000 earnest money check. You already envision yourself living there. You're already figuring out stuff.
We've driven the neighborhood, and it was close to, it was close to our previous condo, and we were like, oh, this will be great. This will be our grocery store we'll go to, and all this stuff. So,
but right move to cancel that, right?
Yes, 100%. It would have been at least $100,000 in renovations in 6 months, and that was money we didn't have. So, so that was the reason for doing our own inspection. Is I wanted to get this gentleman's feedback on this property as
So
well.
inspection, sewer radon, typical stuff.
Typical stuff. We got sewer scope. They couldn't complete the scope. There was a bump in the line, and they're like, we can't get past it. And so that was a red flag for us. The inspection came back with the roof's pretty much shot. HVAC is 20 plus years old, on its way out the door. There was some settling and some concrete that raised some concerns, and then also the electrical panel was a Zinsco panel, I believe, which is a potentially dangerous
replace those
issue to have. So there are a lot of big ticket items in there, and that's sort of where we said, okay, what are we going to go back to the seller with?
So what was the negotiation?
So we went. So since we had the minimum threshold for going back to the seller, we said, okay, what are the big ticket items that we're looking at? Roof, number one. Number two was the sewer, because we couldn't get a full scope. We said either we need a completed, you need to jet the line, clean the line, and give us a clean scope, or fix whatever issues there are. We also said, okay, we'll throw in the AC, because that was non-functioning at the time. We said we'll ask for that and see what happens, and then we'll ask for, there was some settled concrete. We said we'll throw in that, ask and see what happens, and basically knowing the last two items were probably throwaways, but give us a little leverage.
Yep. So what'd they do? What'd they come back with you?
So they came back and agreed to give us a credit on the roof. Basically, we had to do they got an estimate, we got two estimates as well, and basically came to an agreement on the amount, which I think ended up being, it was $6,500 on that. And then the sewer line, they ended up getting it cleaned, and then once they got it cleaned, realized that it was cracked and had to do a pipe burst on it. So we needed to get that replaced. And then they also agreed to do the electrical panel.
So altogether, you have about $9,300 in seller credit, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what that means there is great. Negotiate that. That's $9,300 less money you have to bring to the closing table. Now, for the initial repair cost, you got $26,000 in here. So that's for new roof, gutters, furnace, AC, and installing washers and dryers, right?
Yep. And some of that was a little, but $6,400 of that was more recent, and wasn't, at the initial move-in.
Yep, but I mean, you're doing that in the first year, really, right?
Yep.
So if it's in the generally, the way I underwrite properties, if it's the first year while you're there, it's initial repair expenses.
Yeah.
Because hey, we have to do this at some point, and you're factoring in. So acquisition cost, you were at about $9,300, and so I'm assuming that was enough just to use all the seller credits.
Yep.
So what was financing on here? Because let's talk about this, because we have seller credits. There are rules around seller credits. If it's a primary residence, up to 3% of the loan value can be seller credits. I believe it's 3%. So on a loan balance of $350,000, you can use whatever $10,000 or $11,000 total in credits. So what'd you use your credits towards?
So our credits, we maximized as much as we could towards some of the closing costs, and then we also had to utilize just over $4,000 towards buying the interest rate down.
Yep.
And that ended up getting us down to 2.625%.
Wow. All right. So 30-year fixed, and you did a 5% down conventional, right?
Yep.
So bought it down, and you're at 2.625. All right. So all in, so $483,000 purchase price, about $9,000 in acquisition costs, $9,000 in seller credits, $26,000 in repair cost, all in for about $52,000 the first year. Now at closing, you were not bringing that. At closing, you were probably all in for about $25,000 or so. But then with the initial repair cost, that is another $25,000 on top of it. Sound about right?
Yeah.
Okay.
About right.
And so you budget for that, you planned for it. You got a great rate at 2.625 right now, so you'll keep that for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then while you're living there, are you living in the top or bottom unit?
So we are living in the upstairs unit currently, and we've got the downstairs rented out.
What is the downstairs rent for?
It's rented for $1,600 a month, plus $175 in utilities for rubs.
So $1,725 for everything?
$1,775.
Oh, $75. All right. So we're gonna write this right now while you're living there. We'll say 3% vacancy, property management. Obviously, you're not paying for that. Repairs and maintenance. We got the initial repair cost the first year. what do you put repairs and maintenance at?
So I've got it at 8%, mostly because I sort of agree with your approach of conservative underwriting, and if it's better, that's a bonus. We do have almost all the major systems now replaced, other than the water heater, because we've got new HVAC, we've got new roof, we've got new electrical panel, and new sewer line.
So yeah, you should have minimal cost, knock on wood, for the first couple of years, but at some point you do have to pay the piper.
Yeah.
So no HOA. Your taxes are about $27 a year. Insurance, $13.75, and then utilities.
We're right about $350
a month.
A month, all in.
Okay, so $350. 350 times 12 to annualize is about $4,200 a year, and that includes all the utilities, right?
That includes internet as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then landscaping.
I threw $500 in my model. We're doing it ourselves currently, and we're most likely going to ask tenants to continue doing it themselves. We'll see how it looks after we've been gone for a year, but
It's a rental,
Yeah.
a future rental. So we got the numbers in here as while you and your fiance are living there. So annual gross income about $21,000 expected.
Mm-hmm.
That is great coming from your neighbor / tenant downstairs. All the expenses about $10,000 a year for expenses. So you are negative cash flowing $13,000, or you are living for about $1,100 a month, pretty conservatively.
Yeah.
So you're paying $1,100 a month to live in a 3-bedroom, 1-bath.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've rented in your life before. Rentals for $1,100. Are they better or worse?
Much worse.
Okay.
Typically.
So great thing is there you are living for great, a lot less than you would by renting or buying just paying the house for yourself. Now, from a personal perspective, you and the fiance, are you two happy?
Yes, I'd say so. I think she would agree 95% of the time. They're
Happy enough?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, obviously there's a compromise, right? The compromise is we have neighbors downstairs, and sometimes we hear them and sometimes they hear us, and that's the trade-off for having somebody pay the majority of your mortgage. And for us at this point in time, we're okay with that. In 5 years, I don't think we'll probably want the same setup.
Yep.
But for us right now, it makes a lot of sense, and we're able to keep saving for the next property.
And your future selves will thank you guys a lot.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll come in here now, and we are going to add in the second rent for when you move out. And you think $1,800 upstairs?
Yeah, and I think that's, the $1,600 rent downstairs, we were going into winter, and we got the lease signed starting December 1. So I initially had the downstairs listed at $1,650, plus we have a detached garage that I was asking another $75 a month for. So I think there's some opportunity to move up potentially both of those numbers, but for conservative purposes, I think that.
All right, so when you move out, what do you think the rent will be? On both, move out, you get the units up to rent.
I think $1,650 and $1,850 are very, very doable.
And then plus rubs on top of that?
Yeah.
So would that be what, $300 a month total?
$350 total for rubs.
Okay, so you're gonna offset it. So that puts you at about just under $4,000 gross monthly income. All the expenses will remain the same. You're gonna self-manage.
Mm-hmm.
Utilities, all that stays the same. Well, now this swings drastically. Now your annual cash flow is about $10,000 a year, or almost $800 a month, or something like that.
Yeah.
So big swing, and move out. You gotta be happy with that.
Definitely, and that's something too worth mentioning is that these are both with the properties rented long term, and Arvada does have some pretty favorable rules for short term opportunities as well, which is something that we're exploring, and when we turn over downstairs, may look at doing that to potentially drive some more returns.
So talk to us about, because you've been in this property now for a good 6 months?
Mm-hmm.
6 months, 7 months. Okay, so we got the numbers here. These are great numbers. Now operating the property, you moved in. What advice or tips can you give people who are thinking about buying their first house hack, or they're about to do that transition? Like, it's always you're planning on doing numbers when you move in. Things get real. Now you're getting tenants. Like, walk people through what you did and advice or mistakes that you made.
Great question. So I think we plan to do a lot of the work ourselves. Getting in there, so we had this previous condo that I was also doing some work on while trying to get that rented. we're trying to do work to this new place in Arvada and get that rented. Be realistic about yourself about how thin you're spread, and ask for help or hire help. We were very fortunate. My parents volunteered to come out for 10 days in September, and they said, we're just going to help with projects. Like we want to come visit you.
That's great.
And it was huge. And, they've always been pretty handy people. So it made a world of difference for us, and just knocked so much stuff off the list that we were able to get the property rented, probably a month or two earlier with that help. So I think being willing to ask for help. And then also on the advertising and tenant screening front, I definitely got to the point where I was like, man, I just want someone in there. I don't want to. We budgeted some reserves to cover the cost of not having tenants, but also, every month I don't have a tenant, that's another $1,600 we got to spend. So
don't worry about $50 a month then.
Yeah, basically, I was pushing for top dollar rent, and it got to the point where if I get someone in there a week or two earlier, that covers that $50 a month rent. Difference.
Which is a great point to think about, because someone's I gotta get this rent, and you can, but if it's going to take you 2 months to rent at that because you're coming in at like a slow time in the market, you're coming in close to winter time. 2 months of vacancy is going to cost you $3,000, $3,200, or you drop $100. Great, you're making $200 less, but you don't have all this other vacancy.
Yeah, so that was a huge lesson for me, because I'm always someone who wants to optimize and be most efficient, and that's great, but go for 85%. Just get it done, get it moving, and
you can definitely go out there like, hey, put the rent, test it out there, test the rent. But if in 48 hours you're not getting any, follow up, great, drop the rent, like get aggressive.
For sure. And I think on the tenant screening, especially if they're going to be tenants that you're living next to, be strict and don't sell your requirements short just to get someone in there ASAP. We probably had 75 inquiries on this place, and
how many property tours did you do?
This was sort of like prime COVID time. So I was doing some FaceTime walkthroughs. I basically said, if you're interested, I'll do a quick FaceTime walkthrough with you. So I guess my process was initial phone call, ask them a list of screening questions, basically who's going to be living there, what's your work situation like, do you smoke, pets, and then we do a FaceTime walkthrough, and if everything looked good, great, I'll get you scheduled. So I think we did 3 or 4 actual tours. One that it was a single older woman, and seemed like a great fit, but then she didn't end up coming through, and so we ended up with a great setup. It's a small family that they've been awesome. So hoping to honestly keep them in there. And
what software did you use to screen them?
We used Zillow Rental Manager.
Okay.
And in terms of advertising, Facebook Marketplace is where both of our tenants our tenant ended up coming from for this place and our condo. Also did Craigslist, which was kind of more of a mixed bag, and then also did Zillow paid listing.
Okay, so that was the software used, and you're going to use that same software and process again for the future for now?
Yeah.
So they were good enough?
Yeah, it worked well, and the only thing I will say is for the condo, we use Zillow Rental Manager to collect rent, which is automated, which is great, but it does take about 5 days to hit your account, whereas if you do it through PayPal, which my other tenant does, we get it in about 2 days.
Okay.
So if that matters to you, that's something I've noticed.
All right. So great property here. What's the future plan? We are, you're 6 months into your 1-year rule. Mm-hmm. What's the next steps? What's the plan?
So plan right now is to keep saving up for the next down payment. We'd like to, try and get a place by next spring. Similar setup in the west. We like the west side of Denver. We'll see what inventory is looking like and what pricing's like at that point. But do one more in Denver, and then we'd like to, eventually move to the mountains, get a little more space, some land, and probably still have something that has a guest house or an ADU type setup, and then focus on buying strictly investment properties, most likely from there on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sounds like a great plan. So what's a great way for people to connect with you, to follow you, to connect with you, learn about you? How can people connect with you, Erik?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got should have my email and phone number in the show notes. I'm happy to chat and just meet up for a coffee or a beer and talk real estate or whatever else you got going on. And then I'm also doing some stuff through a side project, stepbystepbnb.com as well.
Yeah, and that's something we're actually, right now we're recording this interview about your house act.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to take a break and actually interview with your partner on there. Jay can do a full in-depth podcast on Airbnb in the mountains, and also talk about the process that you guys have put together, which is what you've documented, put together on that website, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So definitely connect with him. If you guys are into Airbnb, listen to that podcast, check out the website because they are good resources. Erik, thank you so much, man.
Chris, appreciate it. Great to be here.